Imagine this for a moment. Someone looks you in the eye and tells you that your life has an expiration date. Not someday, not in the future, but a real number. Hours, days, or maybe just minutes. Most of us assume that kind of news would instantly break a person from the inside. We imagine panic, tears, or some dramatic moment of realization. But psychology tells a much stranger story. Because when you truly know you're going to die, your brain doesn't always react the way you expect. In fact, it can completely change how reality feels. For decades, psychologists, doctors, and neuroscientists have studied what happens when the human mind finally understands that death is unavoidable. And one of the most important discoveries is this: knowing you're going to die does not create one single experience. The brain reacts very differently depending on how much time you think you have left. Months, minutes, or seconds each activate a completely different mental state, different emotions, different survival systems, almost like different versions of the brain waking up for the final chapter. Let's start with the situation most people are familiar with: knowing you're going to die, but not immediately. This is the kind of knowledge that usually comes in a hospital room. A diagnosis, a quiet sentence from a doctor. Many people imagine that this moment brings clarity or sudden peace. But psychology shows the opposite. When you're told your time is limited, the brain does not calm you down. It goes into emotional defense mode. The first reaction is often denial, not because someone is weak, but because the brain is trying to protect itself. Your mind temporarily refuses to absorb the full meaning of the words you just heard. It's a built-in survival response. Accepting a scheduled ending is one of the most painful pieces of information a human can receive, so the brain slows it down. It creates emotional distance. This is why people often say they feel numb after hearing life-changing news. As days or months pass, something else happens. The body begins to change, especially in long-term illness. People sleep more, speak less, and withdraw, not because they want to, but because the brain is conserving energy. Circulation shifts toward vital organs. Breathing patterns change. Confusion can appear. Sometimes people speak to loved ones who are no longer alive. This isn't spiritual or mysterious. It's the brain losing oxygen and blending memory with reality. Eventually, consciousness fades. Fear doesn't turn into peace. It simply disappears because the brain no longer has the strength to generate strong emotions at all. In slow deaths, many people don't actively feel like they're dying. The mind doesn't reach enlightenment. It powers down. But this experience is completely different from knowing death is coming in minutes. Now imagine a sudden, uncontrollable situation. An accident, a crash, a violent failure. There's no diagnosis, no time to process. In this moment, you understand instantly that survival is unlikely. And here's where psychology gets strange. Instead of panic increasing, many people report the opposite: a sudden, eerie calm. Survivors of extreme accidents describe the same thing again and again. The fear shuts off. Time feels slower. Sounds become clearer. Thoughts feel sharp and focused. This isn't peace. It's not acceptance. It's the brain switching into an automatic emergency mode. The amygdala, the part responsible for fear, reduces its activity. The brain dissociates to prevent panic from taking control. This state exists for one reason only: to let you function for a few final seconds without being paralyzed by terror. Even when escape isn't possible, the brain still tries to give you clarity. That's why people often say, "I wasn't scared anymore." It wasn't comfort. It was biology doing its last job. This is also where many of the famous near-death sensations begin. The feeling of leaving the body, watching events from the outside, time stretching. These experiences feel supernatural, but neuroscience offers explanations. Sensory systems lose synchronization. The brain no longer knows where you are located, so it creates an external viewpoint. And then there's a third scenario, the strangest one of all. When someone knows they are dying and then comes back. In cases like cardiac arrest or near drowning, people sometimes lose consciousness for seconds and are later revived. These individuals often report intense experiences, overwhelming peace, bright lights, tunnels, and vivid life reviews. Unlike slow illness or sudden accidents, this state exists at the border between functioning and shutdown. When oxygen drops rapidly, the visual cortex fires chaotically, creating tunnel-like light effects. Memory systems collapse, releasing fragments all at once, which feels like your entire life flashing before you. And the sense of peace? That's chemistry. The brain releases powerful neurotransmitters and endorphins that block fear and pain. What feels like acceptance is actually emotional shutdown designed to ease the transition. Here's the most important part. These experiences only happen when someone returns. They are not descriptions of death itself. They are the final sparks of a brain that is failing, but not yet silent. A last burst of activity before the system goes dark. And that leads to an uncomfortable truth. None of these reactions exist to explain death. They don't exist to provide meaning or answers. They exist for survival, or to signal that survival is no longer possible. Everything else is interpretation. Science can describe how the body shuts down. It can explain fear, calm, visions, and memory floods. But it cannot tell us what happens to consciousness after the final moment. No one can. And maybe that's why this topic never lets us go. The brain avoids understanding death, but the human heart keeps asking anyway. So maybe the real question isn't what happens when you know you're going to die. Maybe the real question is this: what are you doing with the time your brain is still fighting to protect? Because if there is something beyond that final second, science won't be the first to reveal it. Your life will. The choices you make now, the meaning you create while you're still here.